I'm Jennifer Byrne, and welcome to what's known around the club as our addiction show, because that's the theme running through both our books tonight, addictions and recovery. The new release is High Sobriety, Melbourne journalist Jill Stark's chronicle of the years she gave up alcohol and discovered more than she'd ever imagined about this country's obsession with drink. Our classic, well, not so much classic as a legend for its size, its density, its mix of comedy and despair, it's Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, regarded by some as a work of genius, the book of the late 20th century, by others as unreadable tosh. But we have all set aside weeks of our lives to read it and its 388 footnotes, not that I'm counting, to see what all the fuss is about. So it's quite a show. Let's start by welcoming back my friends Marieke Hardy and Jason Spiegel. Our first guest is a singer and songwriter, frontman for Something for Kate. So won't you give, please, a warm book club welcome to avid reader and bringer of the jest, Mr. Paul Dempsey. And it's welcome back to our second guest, a veteran of the club. Oh, sounds bad, isn't it, veteran? But since she last appeared, she's published the dazzling short story collection Like a House on Fire. She is one of our finest and most interesting writers, Kate Kennedy. So, to High Sobriety and a year on the wagon with Jill Stark.
It's tough to convince Aussies to take a break from drinking when alcohol is so ubiquitous. Used to commemorate our fallen diggers, back up our sporting heroes and sell us the notion that it can help us make friends and find love. Laying off the booze means you're a boring, un-Australian loser. But as a binge-drinking health reporter that seeks to hold government and industry to account for Australians' drinking problem, I think it's about time I gave it a red-hot Aussie go.
There you go. What do you think, High Sobriety? What effect did it have on you?
Well, I haven't had a drink since I stopped reading it, so there you go. It is powerful. I think it's an important book. I think it's flawed in some ways, which I think we'll discuss, but I think it's an important book, and I think of all the people who have the credentials to write it, I think the fact she's come from a Scottish and an Australian background, two cultures that define themselves through alcohol. She's been a barmaid, she's been a heavy drinker, and she's been a health reporter for Fairfax. I think she does cover all bases. So she's not writing it with that cold, clinical, this is what I hear about how some people drink, and she lays herself bare. And I think it's an important book for people of a certain age to read. Yeah.
You, in fact, know her personally. She's the Fairfax health reporter, but in fact she's round the corner from you.
Yeah, she sits about as close to me at work as Paul is at the moment. But look, I like the book a lot. I agree with Marieke. I think it's a brave book because she does lay herself bare. I saw it as a book about identity, actually. Very much finding an identity. Yeah.
Beneath the booze?
Beneath the booze, beneath the sort of cultural constructs of each country to which she's attached. It's a book about finding an identity. It's almost like a book about, like, dropping out. You know, in the 60s it would have been a book about sort of leaving the rat race and everything. In this case, she's left the drink behind and she's looking for her identity.
Ah. You've read it much more deeply than I have. I took it as a really brave book about alcohol, her own relationship with it, but yeah.
It's all that as well.
What do you think?
Well, like Marieke, I also haven't had a drink since I finished reading it. Possibly also because I've been not so healthy. But yeah, it's definitely made me think about my relationship with alcohol. And, you know, not having had a drink for a few weeks now, I'm considering, you know, how many more weeks that might be.
And that is so interesting. It made me worry about my relationship with alcohol, but it didn't make me stop drinking. Yeah. I must admit, I was really impressed that she came down off basically the high moral ground of being the health reporter. And she did engage, didn't she? I mean, she told you a lot about herself.
There was that, and I thought what was great was it really made me stop and think, we may not be alcoholics, but in a way we do kind of abuse alcohol. And the way that she talks about it, which is that once you take away that thing, and she's quite prepared to say it's a crutch for her, it's a social crutch, it's been a crutch for her to get through relationships, to get through working days, to get through kind of cultural, you know, exchange, tragedy and grief that she covers in the book. It does make me really realise how indispensable that glass is in your hand.
And you don't think about it, do you? No. I mean, she talks about it as a glass of liquid confidence.
Yes.
And you kind of know that. But when someone writes it and you actually look at it and talks about how there is never a celebration in Australia, there's nothing that happens without alcohol.
And also other people's reactions. I think that's a really interesting part of the book. And there's quite a poignant exchange when she goes out with a girlfriend and wants to carry on the conversation, and she suggests a rooftop bar, and her girlfriend gets very uncomfortable saying, I don't want to lose control and have you sort of on the superior ground and you're in control. Yeah. I mean, obviously the girlfriend knows that she's going to have a couple of drinks and she feels embarrassed in advance, ashamed in advance, and the night sort of, it stops them. And I think it was a really sad exchange.
I think that was the single most interesting thing, actually.
Oh, yeah, that admission that, that we can't sort of relate, without sharing a drink.
Yeah, she stops getting invited to things as well. She loses friends over it, over the year, that people stop asking. They have, birthdays in beer gardens, don't invite Jill because she's not going to drink and she'll make us feel uncomfortable.
But isn't it absurd that if you're not drinking, that people would be sort of surprised, would find it odd.
But it's, she calls them the modern...
neat vodka.
Dream on. The modern day lepers. She says the teetotaler is the modern day leper.
The wowser.
Has it been weird for you with your friends since you gave up drinking?
Well, I haven't given up. I just haven't been. And again, it's that sort of... just privately to myself, I didn't even want to say to anyone that I wasn't going to drink for a while because I don't know how long I'm not going to drink for.
But you don't want to put that on the table as well, because then you have to have the discussion. Why aren't you drinking? Well, how long for? And people get very aggressive about it because what your sobriety or not drinking says to them, it holds up a mirror to themselves. And there's a lot of aggressive reactions that Jill Stark gets throughout the book.
Because they're being defensive about their own drinking.
And that's a constant,
It is a kind of two books in one, though, isn't it? It's that, what you're saying, an identity memoir or a story of her drinking, but it's also facts and figures.
Yeah, and there were moments when I thought that there were perhaps too many facts and figures, too much research. I mean, almost every point she makes, then she's got this bit of research. But overall, I thought that she did it reasonably deftly, actually. I didn't feel that I was being hit over the head with figures. Occasionally, though, I didn't take in all the figures.
Yeah, I felt like I was being hit. I mean, a couple of times I thought, well, this is a Good Weekend article that is stretched on to novel size. And I thought she was heavy-handed with the stats. She was at her most interesting when she was vulnerable and personal and anecdotal, and they're the stories that really sing out.
Yeah. And when she writes, she's got such a great pace and a great voice when she's writing candidly about herself and her own experiences. It's really easy to go along with her and relate with her. And when she does sort of skip from memoir to journalism, it gets a little dry.
The stuff about the industry is interesting, I think, and the way they market their drinks.
That was great.
And how they deny that they're trying to get sort of younger people drinking, and no, with the fact that we're making, this sweet stuff.
I was just going to say, I thought the anecdotes were really, really great. And as you said, when they became personal, they were the most effective and they really spoke for themselves. What annoyed me at the end of each of those anecdotes was the little kind of sentence. It must be a journalistic thing, I don't know, where she says, gee, could that be true? Maybe I was overcompensating in my life because of it. It's like, I get it. I understand. You've just shown me this in such a beautiful way because you have been candid and personal. I didn't have to have the little wrap-up, I guess. I would have much preferred to have seen the memoir, and I thought it was neatly put together where every single month a different thing struck her and she was able to kind of relate it then to a different feature, like, say, Anzac Day was about the way that's the biggest day of alcohol abuse and ambulance call-outs and assaults and so on in the whole year, which is incredible to think because we all associate it with drinking now. It's a day off and we all drink on our days off. She has...
Melbourne Cup,
the Spring Racing Carnival, the footy, and then she neatly puts it together. But I would have just so much preferred to have had that woven together without the little homily, I guess.
You didn't like the writing full stop, did you?
I thought the writing... I loved the memoir stuff. I thought she sounded like someone you'd like to have a drink with, She sounded like the sort of person that you could certainly sit down and talk to, and that was a very chatty and conversational style, but then it didn't sit well with me that she was then sort of swapping back and forth in this way. Yeah.
How long won't you drink, do you think?
I don't know. I'm like Paul. I don't want to say, because you set yourself this probably tedious, tiresome conversation that you have with people, either saying that you should change your mind, or if you have a drink saying, oh, well, then you haven't done the X amount of time that you said. It's just, you shouldn't have to set those boundaries and have those conversations. It should be a personal thing.
But you've announced it now on...
Well, now I'm buggered now.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't saying anything, and now I've been outed on national television, so it's
You're
probably
in a lot
going
of
to
trouble.
We'll go
result
and
in
have
a
a drink
pub
together
crawl.
afterwards.
What was it in the book that made you feel like that? Can you point to one thing that, you know, because I feel it in a general way, and it made me really look at my drinking.
I think it might have been the first sentence where she basically wakes up with a god-awful hangover. And I just thought about how many times I've done that and how many times I've said to myself, this has to end. But it doesn't, Facing that, is the tough one. And I guess that's what the whole book is about, is that it's a tough challenge to go a year without a drink. It's a tough challenge to go 3 months without a drink. It is just such a part of our interactions.
And that's one of the strengths of the books, I think. She says it's not finger-wagging. It's actually not saying you're bad or you're good. Or it's just saying this is something for you to think about. That basically the alcohol industry has found a way to own belonging, to own inclusion, and you will be excluded and locked out if you don't do this.
In quite a hostile way.
The thing about the identity stuff is the fact that she manages, she's terrified of dancing if she's not drunk, terrified of meeting a boy if she's not drunk. And she manages she achieves all this, and that's what I mean about the identity. At the end, during the course of the book, she becomes an Australian citizen, and this is all very sort of neatly done, I think, because what she's trying to do is find who she is without that sort of hazy-eyed drunkenness.
Interesting. Why is it that we didn't give up alcohol and they did for a brief period? What impact did it have on you?
I have to confess, I also have given up alcohol after reading this book, yes.
Jen, this is an intervention. These cameras aren't real.
Jen.
These people are all actors. I'm so sorry. Come on, nap time.
Jace, you and I are the journalists. Proving exactly the point.
Well, we had a drink last night, so
we
that's
did.
all right.
But I was drinking water when you found me. Remember, I said I'm drinking it because of the Jill Stark book.
And that's when I went to get a beer.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, the book will really make you look with fresh eyes at your own kind of unconscious habits.
And I think that's why it's important.
Yeah.
I think the examination of self that it creates, I think, is the most important part of it.
So who'd have thought? It actually is. I agree with you. It's a really important book, really worth reading. High Sobriety by Jill Stark. Time now to look at what else we've been reading over this past month, starting with you, Jess.
I've been reading... Well, I have read a book called Alex by Pierre Lemaitre, which is a French thriller. It's in Gone Girl territory. It's more thrilling than Gone Girl, and it doesn't play quite as many... I don't think it plays quite as many tricks with the reader as Gone Girl. So I think if you like Gone Girl, and I know you did...
Is there a thriller I won't have read? Of course I've read Alex.
Did you like it?
Loved it.
Yeah. It's in the same territory, isn't it?
It's the unreliable victim territory. Yeah.
But I thought it was very good. Yeah.
I agree.
I've read Janet Malcolm's The Silent Woman, which is just pretty much a book about biography. About Sylvia Plath's biographies, how the biographers take hold of a human story and craft it as they see fit. And it's just beautifully, simply... It's just gorgeously done.
She's a genius.
Yeah, she really is a genius.
Paul?
I've recently read Incognito, The Secret Lives of the Brain by David Eagleman, which is a non-fiction neuroscience kind of book, and it's full of fascinating stuff about all the things your brain is doing that you're not aware of, and all the stuff you think you know and the decisions you think you're making that, have often been made for you and you're just making it up as you go along, sort of keeping up.
The brain is the ghost in the machine.
Yeah, one of several, I think. Several trillion.
I've been reading essays by the wonderful, late, great David Rakoff. This is called Half Empty. Another collection of his is called Don't Get Too Comfortable. And he's got also one called Fraud. But he was a fantastic writer. They're non-fiction. They're about all different kinds of things. They're funny, they're witty, they're brilliant. He is such a wordsmith and such a loss, I think. He died very young, I think 48, 49, just last year, died of cancer. And he's well known also as a broadcaster on This American Life. And these are just such a delight to curl up with at night. He's fantastic.
Well, I've been not so much reading as luxuriating in All That Is, which is the new novel by James Salter, American master, post-war is his zone. It's his first book in 34 years. It is absolutely extraordinary. He is what they call a writer's writer, which is an excuse for saying his peers love him but no one else reads him. And it's true, because when we did Sport and a Pastime last year, it was effectively out of print in Australia. I just think he's a genius. He's a contemporary of Mailer and Bellow. I think he's the greatest of them all. I would really recommend you read it. Now, to our classic, this beer moth. Paul has brought us about addiction, about tennis, Quebec separatists, about environmental calamity, and about a film so compelling it literally entertains people to death. We are talking about David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest. Who wouldn't want to read that book? Or in the case of Paul Dempsey, read that book 5 times. Take us back to the first time you read Infinite Jest.
The first time was in about 2003. It was recommended to me by a friend we have very similar tastes in books, and I knew in the first couple of pages that I was not going to be able to put this down. It's about addiction and entertainment. And passivity, I would say. Choosing to engage or to be passive.
Living at the end of the 20th century. We will come back for more on your favourite book. Marique?
I don't know. I don't know what I feel. I don't know what I think about it. Since I put it down, since I threw it across the room when I finished it, which I did, and that was hefty. I can't tell if it's a masterpiece or a massive pile of art wank, and I don't know. I honestly don't know. And I did throw it across the room, and I thought, well, to hell with you and the time of mine that you've wasted, Foster Wallace. And then went to bed and woke up the next morning still thinking about it. Went and looked it up on the internet, found a beautifully written explanation or précis of someone else's interpretation of the book. It's also the sadly departed Aaron Swartz, who was a computer programmer who also took his own life like David Foster Wallace, which explained everything very clearly, and of course then it opened the book up like a flower. But then I can't tell, I don't know if I want to read a book that needs a separate explanation, that you need to go somewhere else in order to have it explained.
But there's no telling that was the right explanation. I've read 4 really coherent explainations.
I think Swartz's, to me, have you read Aaron Swartz's explanation?
No, I know what you're talking about, but I haven't gotten to it yet. Yeah.
Yeah, but it makes it all clear. To me, it made it all clear.
Unless he's wrong.
But he's not wrong. Oh, see,
This book, it was so immersive because it takes so long to read. It's like part of your life for so many months. It's like I felt married to the book, actually.
I can't believe yours is in such good nick. Look at mine.
In fact, it's not good for your marriage, a book like this, because it takes up so much of your time. My husband calls it infinite test, actually. But I found, very much like a relationship, I began and I was totally overwhelmed and in awe of this person's talent. and just couldn't get enough of it. And then as time went on, very much like a relationship, it began to wear a bit thinner with me. Until finally I was saying, oh, can't you just be quiet? Can you just shut up?
Yeah.
You know, like it's like being trapped in a house full of amazing interconnected rooms with the smartest person on the planet. There is no two ways about that. He is a genius. He is an intellect like you would just never find again. And yet he's like following you around the room at you all the time. I found that I was totally overwhelmed by the kind of extraordinary density and scope. It was like a big, unholy mess of something, and I could sort of see this amazing genius. I actually read concurrently his non-fiction, which I absolutely loved and thought was brilliant, and I'd come back to the fiction, and it was just like, what, is there 4 books in here? Is there, it's sort of, it's such a postmodern kind of incredible scramble of ideas that I must say at the end I was glad to get to the end of the book. It was like a big test.
He makes the exit, the last door, the hardest
the
hardest bit to track.
I couldn't even say, does the plot finish? There doesn't really seem to be a plot that needs to be finished. It's like an incredible, as you said, it's like we are being entertained to death, you know.
So, a relationship, what's your metaphor?
Well, I found, I mean, I think it is a masterpiece, some sort of masterpiece. I'm just not quite sure what sort of masterpiece. I mean, it is a sort of berserk book. I had all sorts of responses to it. I was bored, I laughed. I mean, it is incredibly funny at times, it really is. I was moved by a lot of it. I think it is an amazing book. Now that I've
now that I've survived it and I've seen the arc of the book, in a way, it'd be good to go back and read it again, because you'd actually. No, I really think you could. I really think you could. Will you though?
Will you?
So
well, I don't know if I have the time. I don't know if I have the time.
No.
And as a footnote to that previous comment,
What's he trying to do? Why is he writing a book that is both, you know, I think we all agree it is brilliant, it's genius, but that it is so difficult to actually traverse, not to read, but to traverse the terrain?
I think one of the things he's trying to suggest in the book is that entertainment and, you know, these sorts of things, you can be very passive. You can just, you know, and, you know, whether he's talking about drugs or short films or whatever, you know, you can be very...
Or the desire to win in tennis. These are all addictions.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I think what, you know, the difference is that, you know, there's one kind of entertainment where you're just sort of completely passively having the reward centre of your brain just pinged, and you can just keep doing that with substances or entertainment. Or there's another thing where you can put in great effort and you know, like with the tennis stuff, you know, you can put in great sustained effort to potentially reap huge rewards. So I think there's an intention behind writing such a gigantic book that requires you to flip back and forth to 300 and something footnotes. It's, you know, he wanted you to work for it a little bit, but he was also aware of, you know, making sure that you were entertained. Yeah. I don't think he he's nice to the reader. You know, I don't think he's trying to punish you. You know, I think the book is very entertaining enough that you keep going. You don't feel like you're being led down the garden path.
See, I disagree with that. I think it's a very hostile book. I think the unfortunate thing for me is that he sets up a very hostile relationship between himself and the reader. I found that some passages of the narrative were really beautiful and you're on his side, and he has said that he put the footnotes in there deliberately to disrupt the narrative. That's what he wants to do, and it's jarring on occasion. And sometimes the footnotes are not worth going to. It's an explanation of something that...
But sometimes they're crucial.
Did you
sometimes
skip
they're
footnotes?
not. No, I'm very
because you can't. Yeah, you can't.
No,
skip.
of course, but I thought occasionally you flip to a footnote and David Foster Wallace was standing there giving you the middle finger.
His intellect is extraordinary, isn't it? Like, he is across everything. He is an amazing thinker. And as I said, I read concurrently with his non-fiction, which is brilliant and lucid and funny and compassionate and beautiful. And he's kind of on task in a way which I didn't find as rewarding in his fiction. Even if it is an anti-narrative, even if it is a narrative that's jumbled and it's impossible to describe what's going on in the book, it is impossible. There are some things in the endnotes that should be in the text to me, and some things in the text probably should be in the endnotes. But
one argument I've heard is that, a bit like, let's take the example of Moby Dick.
Yep.
Right, one of the great books. And when you read that, sometimes you think, oh, why don't I want to hear one more thing about the nature of the whaling industry in the 1800s or whatever? But that's the point. You've got to be obsessed in the way that Ahab is obsessed about the whale. And you could argue that for Infinite Jest, that you've got to be fractured, splintered, torn, distracted, uncertain where the centre is, why the centre will not hold. You've got to be there, confused, discombobulated, entertained, bored. Otherwise you won't understand the book.
Absolutely. And the bit about addiction and the bit that's set in Enfield House, the bit that's talking about Don Gately and his kind of character and the stuff that happens, it's like, I love those bits. I think that is a book in itself, I think. What happens at the addiction centre is the book.
And I just think the characters themselves are, you know, enough. I just fell in love with all those characters so much. I was just so with them. Just like, you can't believe that this all came out of one individual's brain.
And he was, what, 34 or something at the time?
I think it's like what you were saying, Jen. You know, you read it and you're confused and it's brilliant. And it's like being inside David Foster Wallace's head. And he was a brilliant and very unhappy person. And you are deeply inside his head. So it's very confrontational, I think.
It's hard. It's a hard place to be.
It is so much about sort of psychic pain. When we talk about addiction, I guess, I really found it, here's a man who is full of pain and he can't, as I said, he can't stop talking. He can't stop. He's got this amazing energy, which is like hyper and manic and just cannot sit and be quiet. And the characters with all that talking remind me of all the different voices that must be there fighting for attention inside that incredible intellect.
I had to treat it like a job in the end. I just had to go write 100 pages a day.
Yeah,
that's onerous. What I had to do.
It felt onerous.
Yeah.
So we have to read something like, oh, that book again. I don't want to be in that joyless state
and then
any more than I want to be.
You finish the 100 pages and you reward yourself with a drink, then Jill Stark comes along, kills the party. Nightmare.
On that point, we will move. Thank you very much for bringing it. I'm really glad I read it, but I'm with you. I change my mind multiple times every day as to what that experience meant to me.
Well, you obviously have to read it again.
Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. And that is our club for another month. A big thank you to tonight's heroic book clubbers. Thank you, Paul, Marique, Jason and Kate. Next month, we're coming to you from the Sydney Writers' Festival with a terrific new novel by the celebrated Colombian author Juan Gabriel Vázquez, The Sound of Things Falling, about a country enmeshed in the violent web of drug baron Pablo Escobar. And we'll be checking out William Gibson's classic Pattern Recognition with international guests Lauren Bukes and Shadow of the Wind author Carlos Ruiz Zafón. And I've been practising for years so I can get that Spanish pronunciation right. Also a reminder that in July, you are bringing the classic to the club. Viewers' nominations, please. Just pop onto our website, Facebook or tweet, and the book with the most love will be on our July program. There's a battle of the Bronte sisters going on at the moment, so get off the sidelines and online and vote for your fave. We will be back on the first Tuesday of June. Look forward to that. Join us. And until then, very happy reading. Good night.